On average, it takes about 30 days for a person to break their New Year's resolution. So if saving money was on your 2024 list, your odds aren't looking that great. Luckily, I have a 100% guaranteed way to save you money this year. Just switch to Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for $15 a month. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile's limited-time deal and get premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/WCB. That's mintmobile.com/WCB. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/WCB. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the Western Hunting Hub podcast. This episode is all about another off-season opportunity for us sportsmen. Traveling to other places to do some fishing can be a pretty daunting task, and we are out of our element. So brought on Captain Zach Rollins from Along the Keel to help us get the experience that we're looking for in a fishing charter. After this episode, I went and booked a fishing charter for myself, and it definitely equipped me with some info and skills that I needed to chat with those fishing charters. It really kind of helped. And it's another opportunity. I know a lot of us in the West will go out and do some of these, or East as well. We'll go out and do some of these other opportunities, and even on the bucket list is going to do just a fishing charter, or not a charter, but going to do some fishing in Alaska as a grocery shopping trip on top of the amount of fun. I've got buddies that go and do that and bring back hundreds of pounds of fish, and probably more expensive to ship that fish back than to than the trip itself. But I'm looking forward to doing that sometime soon. But otherwise, this is a little off the cuff of what I've been covering, but I think it's good stuff. So please give it a listen. Not hunting, but we're kind of out of the main hunting season, so I want to get us rolling into some other things that gets us outside in the field or out on the water. Thanks for listening. All right, Zach, thanks for jumping on the Western Hunting Hub podcast. Had an episode previously, just a little out of the box, to discuss more fishing related things. I know this is Western Hunting Hub, and every once in a while I like to throw in some fishing related topics. Zach Rollins got me connected with Waypoint TV, and that's where we've been hosting the podcast, but also connected with a lot of some of the really great guests we've had on over the time. So I'd have to think back. I mean, it's just weird connections how they work, but there's a long list of folks that I've been chatting with that Zach is responsible for getting me those people. So thanks for that, but also thanks for joining me this morning. And if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Zach Rollins. I am a captain here in Rhode Island and have spent most of my life working on or around the water. I also have a couple businesses outside of the waterfront, but for the most part, my life has always been revolving around the ocean, whether it be living and growing up here in Rhode Island to on the coast of Florida, coast of Hawaii, coast of California. It's always been a theme in my life, and if you walk around my house, most of the artwork is all ocean related. And having it been Christmas yesterday, my dad actually got me a big chart of Narragansett Bay to hang up on the wall. So it's kind of fortuitous to have this conversation, because it's just always been a big part of my life, and I love being able to share it with people that have any interest in the ocean. I can go down a wormhole if we want.
Oh, absolutely. Where in Rhode Island are you?
Yeah, so I grew up in a little village called Wickford, Rhode Island, which is a part of North Kingstown. But Rhode Island's it's not a very, very big state. I think it would take you 45 minutes on a good day to go from north to south, and about the same east to west. So It's a pretty small state to grow up in and an unbelievable spot
Did you say
to
Wickford?
Wickford.
Oh
Yep.
man, I was there. Yeah, right.
Shut up.
Yeah, I was there. We were in Wickford and um
You were in Wickford, Rhode Island?
yeah, yeah.
When?
That was like 2 years ago.
What?
I know. I didn't connect the dots in any of this. My wife and
Dude,
I
you're
had,
like 5 minutes from where I lived.
I'm sure, I'm sure. And this is kind of where this is roughly started. I think I had mentioned something um because I had a crappy fishing experience. It just was garbage. I didn't like it,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure that was
Out of Wickford?
um we went down south of there to
Oh, I
uh
think I feel like we might have connected on this.
yes, yeah, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it was after the fact.
Correct. And
So
then I gave you recommendations for the next time to go,
yeah,
right?
yep,
With big game. Yeah, okay, all right.
yep,
Now conversation's coming back.
yep.
Yeah.
But that this was such a off the wall thing. We had a uh plane ticket vouchers to go somewhere that were going to expire because it was a COVID flight thing. We're like, oh, I got to use them
Yeah.
because we had to cancel some flight earlier to go to the wrestling NCAA national championship. That was what the goal was, to go to that in
Right.
Minneapolis, but that got canceled. So I was like, well, uh, 2 years later we could use these things, and I just literally picked on a map of this random little airline of where to go, and like, how about Rhode Island?
Here we go.
Brought some friends, and we had a riot. We had an absolute riot. We had fun. Just an adult trip. The food was amazing, outstanding.
Where'd you guys go to eat?
There was a little place in um in, in Wickford. Oh gosh.
The Wickford on the Water.
Yeah, we were all over kind of some different spots in there. I'll have to get back to where we had, but my wife and
Yeah.
I have to think about that of exactly where we're eating. But anywhere we ate, that's the first time I had oysters, and
Oh, shut
was,
up. Really?
yeah, blown away by
Yeah.
I mean, just quality oysters,
Yep.
quality food. Um, and I mean, we caught sea bass and some striper. The striper was good, but sea bass is great. It
Oh,
feels like
yeah.
it's the walleye of that area. I mean, you go catch some good fish. Walleye is great eating, perch is great eating, sea bass is great eating. Just
Dude,
go catch a bunch, and um oh, that's an awesome print. There you go.
cool little print, right? Yeah, I was in Boston, I don't know, a couple days ago with my girlfriend going up because she's a photographer. So I was helping her out with a proposal shoot,
Hmm.
and there was this lady on the side of the like I can't remember, I think we're in Boylston, and she has these book prints of like old U.S. Fish and Wildlife, like all sorts of different books. And this print was from like 1895, like turn of the century. So it's all chromographs and what basically was kind of like a lithograph, but then they go in and they hand color everything. So it's kind of like hand done artwork, but not really.
Hmm.
But anyway, that to say that's a black sea bass. So
There you go.
um,
Sweet.
yeah, they are unbelievable eating fish. And I think my favorite way to do them is either fillet them or you can just cook the whole thing, like gut them and just
Yeah.
freaking put them in the
Yeah.
grill. Unbelievable.
Well, and to catch my audience up on what we're looking at today is I get a lot of chat around the office and around other hunters about this time of year, thinking about, oh, let's go to Alaska and catch some fish, and just as a shopping trip. Um, Hunters in the West here need to diversify our freezer, and salmon and sea bass and mahi mahi are all species that absolutely delicious, and we would love to fill our freezers with that sort of thing too. So we're trying to get out of go have another cool experience, but all of that stuff is very much related to what we do here in the West. We're out grocery
Hmm.
shopping, looking for some good food, and it's a world we don't know much about. So that was the goal today, is just kind of figure out some things of that world and how we can have a great experience, have some fun, have some adventure. Because I don't feel like what I've gone on is quite an adventure is the experience. I feel like I was paying for fish, not paying for an experience.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it was like. But also we didn't have you say what you do. What's your podcast and what's your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so I have a podcast and company called Along the Keel, and basically it's myself, and then recently brought on a partner to help do a lot of the media production. So any like the fancy photography, videography that people see on Instagram, that's all my partner and friend, good friend Tyler. And he came on probably a couple years ago now, just helping out with more of the media side of things. And then the majority of the business is actually marine service. So we do vessel deliveries, vessel charters, as well as occasional fishing, and a lot of vessel and education. So that's kind of the day to day during the summertime. And then I also have a home service business that I run year round. So I stay pretty busy, but come spring, summer, and fall, I spend the vast majority of my time on the water. I couldn't even tell you how many nautical miles I logged this year, but it's got to be well above, like close to, a couple thousand, I would say,
Hmm.
on the water.
What what's your favorite target species? If you could go out today and it's peak season for anything, let's just say, what's your
Ooh.
favorite? What are you going after?
Am I going for fun or am I going for food?
Both answers.
Okay. If I'm going for food, it's tautog, which a lot of people call blackfish, which not to be confused with the black sea bass. Tautog is just an unbelievable creature. They're just super, they kind of look like I don't know, like a black sea bass with human teeth.
Hmm.
Instead of scales, they have skin. I mean, they do have scales, but it's the scales are so small that it looks like a just like an armor, just a plate of armor on them. And the reason why is because they live in all the rocks and crevices of Narragansett Bay and surrounding areas here in the Northeast. But Rhode Island has such a dense population of them that during the fall run, or not run, but during the fall season, people from all around the Northeast, from New Jersey to New Hampshire, come to Rhode Island to specifically target the tautog. And it's actually sparked a lot of controversy in recent years because of that, because it's actually taking some money away from local charter fishermen. But the tautog, from a cooking standpoint, is unbelievable species to eat. Just it's like the steak of the sea. Some people
Hmm.
say it's like it kind of tastes like lobster, but it has a really dense meat to it, and they get old. There was actually a friend of mine who is literally the dock across. He got so close to breaking the record this year. I think it was like 19.4 pounds, which for a tautog is a big fish. And they dated the fish at like around 40 years old. So
Wow.
they get really old for a fish species, and they're just cool looking. They got these big human-like teeth. They almost look like they're like out of a toddler. Um, and they're just cool creatures. I always describe if Rhode Island had a state bird, state fish, it would be and should be the tautog. And
Hmm.
I actually have I got I told you I got a lot of artwork hanging around the house full
Yeah.
of that's the tautog right there.
Oh, sure.
So that was done by a guy by the name of Dylan Stewart. He has a company called Gold Coast Burns, and he burned that in, colored it, and then kind of CNC'd it out of like some plywood. But yeah, if I were to go eat, that would be the fish. And if I were to go catch, I mean, the false albacores are so much fun to catch. Just
Yep.
going albie fishing come the fall. But I mean, people go, some guys like striper fishing. I love fishing the fall. So albies and tautog are probably gonna be my top two.
Sure. Uh, what any hunting experience? Just because we're talking to a bunch of hunters. You been anywhere, done anything?
Very, very, very little hunting. Yeah, most of my time is spent on the water. I've gotten my buddies have tried to convince me to get a bow, and I've almost pulled the trigger, pun intended, several times,
Mm-hmm.
but I just haven't had the time, honestly, to like go and practice the bow,
Yep.
which is probably an excuse because, if you want to make it happen, you can make it happen. But I do a lot of skeet shooting. So that's kind of been if it's not hunting per se, but
Yeah, no,
I
shooting
do a lot
sports.
of,
Hey,
yeah, I do a lot of skeet shooting.
you are contributing to Pittman Robertson dollars, heavily doing that. You're
Yeah.
contributing to Dingle Johnson dollars by buying the fishing equipment. You
Yep.
are supporting the world.
Hey, I'm all for it. Pittman Robertson, like Madison Stevens, I think that the the way the world is built in how we conserve is done with such purpose, and yet not a lot of people understand where and why and how their money goes to help it. So then you have this just massive controversy around it, and it's really just lack of education.
Right. Absolutely. So we had mentioned, and I mentioned in the podcast here before, that headed to Hawaii, and I'm looking for a pretty solid experience. This whole trip's just a deal that my brother's getting married. He even said, he's like, I need you from at 4:30 on Friday for the evening. Otherwise, you do whatever you want to do.
Go play.
Yeah, go play, have fun. This is your vacation, but be around at 4:30. We're good to go. So we've had a whole lineup of some fun things, and
Hmm.
as as a hunter, and not someone who likes a Disney vacation, I have zero desire and absolute almost a hatred for Disney vacations. It's the last thing I want to do. Have
Yep.
you ever had anybody try and sell you like a timeshare or something like that, and they're trying to tell you where you could just go and sit and do all these things? Like, I want to moose hunt. I want to go catch halibut. I want to catch.
Yep.
I want to go catch some fish. You don't even have that option of what I want to do on your list. That's not the thing. It's
Nope.
not even
Not even
there.
in that area. Not
Yeah.
even in that area. Yeah.
And so I wouldn't give you $100 to to be
I,
able to. You're talking to the wrong guy for this vacation.
yep.
So,
Preach to the choir.
yep. Um, and so many of these places, I mean, they're tourist locations. They're meant to pump the tourists in and out. Hawaii, Rhode Island, and South Dakota has that with our pheasant hunting, even.
Yep.
To pump people in and out, be a number, you caught your fish, out the door you go. And to try and find somebody with the passion of it to want to just help you get an experience and have some fun.
Hmm.
And then also maybe make you work for it a little bit. I don't know how
Hmm.
to find such a person, a captain. And right now I'm not going to be able to be picky. I'm going to have to settle, I'm sure, because with the boats burning up in Maui, there's not a lot of choice.
Right.
So going, and if this was a full on just fishing trip, I probably would be going to the Big Island to be focusing on some charters, because that's where I guess a lot of the charters are going. Is head
Yeah.
on. The captains and the mates and everything are headed over that way to do some work, because they don't have boats on
Right.
Maui. So, but give me some advice. Like, what? Just start there. I don't know what to do. Like, how do we? As you're scrolling through and you find, I got one pulled up right here. I got a 43-foot rascal. We're looking at
What's the company called?
Hawaii. Hmm. So, this website, Hawaii Deep Sea Fishing, is what I found, and not finding a lot because I'm needing to go out of a certain port, or I don't even know if I'm using the right language, but having to go out of a certain bay to where they still are running boats.
Hmm.
But there's so many on there, and I don't have a clue on where to start.
Yeah.
What makes someone worthwhile? So, and I'll start by kind of discussing what my Rhode Island situation was. I literally picked one. This is stupid. I don't know why I didn't connect the dots in contacting you. It was stupid.
Been on my boat. Come on, man.
I know, that would have been so awesome. But we literally just picked one, and they were all about, let's make sure they get their fish. I told them, I was like, I want to take some meat home. That's what I want to do. Let's go catch some fish. So that was the goal. And yeah, and they kind of catered to that of, we're going to get you fish. But I'm pretty positive we did something illegal, which I don't like.
What's that?
Go keep fish outside of a certain
Oh,
area.
outside of the boundary.
Yeah.
With stripers.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I seemed like that probably was happening like
Yeah,
frequently.
unfortunately.
Yeah, right. Which I'm not about. I work for a state agency. I'm supportive I'm supportive of regulations. They're there for a reason. But I'm relying on a captain. I don't have a clue what's going on.
Right.
I just kind of picked that up as things were going on. Like, it doesn't sound like we did the best there. Or
Yeah, right.
I'm not positive on where we were with sea bass, and it was you're relying on the first mate there to be, he's handling stuff. And
Right.
so we might have even gone over on that. So I don't like that at all. And that's an extreme situation, but it was also just a heavy tackle for these smaller fish. They're like,
Yeah.
could we do top water? You had mentioned something about top water for blues. The blues in a certain area were just couldn't keep the line in the water. It's like, could we throw some jigs out there or do something to try and catch these fish on lighter tackle? Like, there was no way to break off these lines. You were set up for marlin, and we're catching 20 pounds.
Harvesting is what they're set up for.
True. Yeah. And
using a combine method.
yeah. And it just, I can feel a little tug on the end of this thing, and it just was not an experience. It was so focused on, let me just get these people their fish and let's get back inshore.
Yeah.
So it was a struggle, but yeah. And maybe I don't even know what I'm looking for. Maybe that's my problem. I don't know what I'm looking for in an experience, because it's so far out of my world. And when I take new hunters out, they tell me the same thing. It's like, I don't even know what to expect. I don't have a clue. I'm relying on you as my guide or my captain to teach me, to show me what you're doing on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be the white guy in Hawaii that
Alley boy.
Yeah, that is your typical tourist. So I will be a number, but how can you relate with people a little bit more? How can you connect with them in a way that they're out having a good time too, and not just being another thing? So whatever you got for me, I'm here to listen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question, because so much of it is really built on or predicated on the captain themselves, right? It's how they, and it could be the captain, and it could be conditions. We talked earlier about what kind of conditions are dictating what kind of fish you can get. So, and what kind of experience you can have. Like I've been, and I still go on charters, like, because areas I don't know or species that I want to learn a little bit more on, like how to catch them. But I think it really all boils down to the captain, right? I mean, plain and simple. If you're able to go on and see that a guy has, a boat that looks like it's halfway decent, some people are a little bit more into the head boats, right? And you're familiar with the head boat?
No.
That term? No. So a head boat is basically a big old, they're usually custom built or retrofitted vessels that are holding, I don't know, let's just use it up to 100 guys, and sometimes even more. And a lot of the times it's just people that bring their own rods, or they supply a rod for you, and you're just going to the grounds and you're just catching fish all day, and then you're coming back. But everything's taken care of, like bait, fillets, everything. Like that is a trip that you're going on to either get pissed drunk with your buddies, or you're gonna go catch a bunch of fish just to fill the freezer. Like that's the goal, right? Whereas a more custom charter, like the one that you went on, is a little bit more along the lines of, hey, how do I get more of an experience, right? And to what you're asking is more like, how do I pick the best candidate to potentially get that experience? And that's a tough thing, right? So I think looking at the boat, right? Is it a boat that isn't, well taken care of? And how do you tell that, right? Well, go online and read a lot of the reviews, right? I mean, and I think that's kind of what I usually do when I'm going and looking for charters. My buddy Tristan, who has I think it's a 36 CV, might be a little smaller, might be like a 32 CV. Unbelievable captain. Catches a ton of fish. If you want to go tuna fishing, you can go tuna fishing. If you want to go tautog fishing, you go tautog fishing. But what he's really good at, he's an entertainer, right? And I think that's kind of the key to being a good captain is that vessel safety, right? Entertainment, and then fish. And usually fishing and entertainment are kind of commingling, right? Because if you're able to get on the fish, but like you said, is you're not entertaining, right? You're not going and making it a little bit challenging. You're not using top water. You're not using a lighter tackle, and you're just going in there to just go, you know, grab your quota for the day, which is how a lot of guys operate. That can be kind of boring, but a lot of times this lighter tackle, you kind of have to think about it from their perspective as well. It becomes more challenging to bring people out in mass quantities because these guys they're doing maybe 1 to 2 charters a day, half days, full days, and they're doing that 6, 7 days a week, right?
Yeah.
So if your goal is to go out and go fishing, well, they want to make sure that you're catching fish because most of the time people are going with the intention of, I want to bring something home, right? Now, for someone like me or someone like you, who's an outdoorsman, right? Who's like, yeah, fish would be great, right? But I'm more interested in the experience, right? Like if I didn't come home with fish, but I had an awesome time catching, fish that maybe didn't quite fit the quota, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be the number of fish I caught or whatnot, then so be it. I don't really care. Like I can go fishing at home. But for the majority of people, like this is a once in a lifetime opportunity or once in a year opportunity for them to go and catch fresh fish off the coast of Rhode Island, right? So I really think boiling it down is, I mean, call up the captain. Be like, what kind of tackle do you use? Ask tough questions. Be more in tune and inquisitive, right? Like do a little bit of research before you start calling up captains in that area, right? Like if I'm going down to the Keys, what are the tarpon doing, right? Where are they running? What kind of bait are they going after? What kind of gear should I be using? So when you go to that captain and he starts asking and you start asking questions, and let's use the example of up here in Rhode Island, you brought up bluefish, right? Well, is the guy just trolling big umbrella rigs off the stern of the boat? Well, if that's how he fishes, you're gonna know that you're gonna catch like 2 to 3 bluefish on the troll, or maybe one or maybe none. But it's gonna be like reeling in a bunch of dead weight. It's not gonna be fun, right?
That's exactly what we
Or
did.
there you go. See, how did I know that? Or if you're someone that is like, no, like what we do is we go hunt down birds. We look for, big boils on the surface. We're throwing top water plugs on light tackle. And then like, okay, cha-ching, we might not get as many fish as the guy with the umbrella rig, but it's going to be way more fun, way more exciting. Because I can tell you, like, fall run, doing that, I brought guys up from Virginia, a bunch of buddies of mine. They were like, we got to catch Northeast striper. I'm like, all right, well, no promises. So what we did, we went out in the morning, we did some tautog fishing, right? And this is another thing too. It's like, do you fish for multiple species during the day? And what time of year should we go, right? So if you're prepping for a trip, and let's say you do 1 trip a year, if you're prepping for a trip and you're like, all right, I want to go tuna fishing. Well, there's different seasons for tuna, right? You can go earlier in the year or like in the fall, right? But if the tuna aren't biting that day, well, can we go to tautog fishing? Can we go striper fishing? Can we go black sea bass? Like, can we mix it up? There's a reason why it's called a New England Grand Slam, right? I mean, you got some awesome species in a really consolidated area here in Rhode Island in particular, but throughout New England, and it makes for a really great fishery, right? But it also makes it to be really exciting too. So if you're going with a captain who's just like, we're going striper fishing, we're trolling umbrella rigs, and that's what we're doing. Cool. You're probably gonna bring home fish.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be exciting? No, it's gonna be boring
Yeah.
as hell.
Yeah.
Like I can't do that. I get bored, right?
Yeah.
If you're like, hey, when's the best time for me to come? Fall? Okay, cool. Can we go to Tog? Can we do some bottom fishing, top water, and maybe look for albies? He's like, sure. It's going to be this time window, right? And you ask him, right? What kind of tackle are you using? What kind of boat do you have? Is it a big, 40-foot, down east boat? Well, you're not going to run and gun in that boat, right? Is it a 28-foot contender? Dude, you're running and gunning all day long, right? Like my buddy Tristan, he runs and guns with Ohana charters, looking for birds, doing bottom fishing, stripers, like he does everything. That's the kind of guy that you want to go. But you kind of have to interview people to figure out who they are as a person, right?
Mm.
And then what type of style fishing, right? Is it a little bit more dynamic or is it more slow and low energy type fishing?
Yeah. Yeah. Old cranky boat captain that you can't have a conversation with.
Yeah. You'd rather have a guy that is salt of the earth than salty, if you know what I mean.
Uh-huh. For
You know
sure.
what I mean?
Absolutely. And people may be confused as to why I brought you on when I'm talking about Hawaii and you're in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
What's your history with Hawaii? What'd you do over there?
Yeah, so I graduated college, went to University of Rhode Island for marine affairs, and then the story goes is a buddy of mine, no, actually he's back, he still lives in Hawaii. Um, he was like, dude, I want to move somewhere. I go, okay, where are you gonna go? He goes, Arizona. I go, well, I'm not going to Arizona. That sounds hot and arid and dry.
Yeah.
Not interested. And next day he calls me up. He's like, "Well, what about Kona, Hawaii?" I go, "Yep, count me in. I'm good. I can get a job there pretty easily." And so anyway, we show up, and I went and got a 6-pack of beer from the local package store, which that's a very Rhode Island thing of me to say because other states you can buy liquor and beer wherever, but in Rhode Island you have to buy it from a store, the liquor store. So went to the grocery store, grabbed a 6-pack of local beer, put it on the desk of the Marine Service Center that was there, which is the only one in Kona, Hawaii, and was like, "Hey, who needs help around here?" And I got hooked up with Captain Bill, who you spoke with,
Mm-hmm.
and Captain Bill was gracious enough to take a little bit of a bet on this, kid from Rhode Island. And I, at the time, had my captain's license. I'd been running boats for a little while and we started doing manta ray charters and fishing charters. And then after that, I moved on to another boat where I would still moonlight for Bill, doing just snorkel trips, dive trips, not so much fishing, but Captain Bill would always call me on here and there to do some fishing charters as well. And I just learned the coast of Kona and in the southern shore of the Big Island, and it was unbelievable experience. Wouldn't trade it for anything. I got to play with whales, dolphins, marlin, met people from all around the world, people of all different ethnicities, races, economic statuses. The coolest part was, no matter what you did that day, during that day, going on a charter, you almost flip like a switch, right? It's like, I'm Captain Zach now, right? I'm using quotes for those that are listening. And the goal was this person might have spent every penny, right, for their life savings to go on this trip with me, right? But then you might have a guy, like I met the guy who built the new San Diego Chargers Stadium, right? $250 million contract. So you have people like that who this is like another fun thing, and then people that are like saving up every penny, but you treat those people the same, right? Because it's just you want to provide such an incredible experience for them that they're thinking back, 2, 3 years down the road, like, man, wasn't that day with Captain Zach an awesome experience? And I think you're able to find guys that want to provide that experience with charter fishing. And then there's some guys that have just been doing it for so long that they're burnt out of it. And that's
Yeah.
when you get the, really salty dudes.
Yeah. You see that in any profession,
Yeah.
anywhere from teachers to guides to any of that. You can get burnt out and just not be able to flip that switch on every day to say,
Right.
okay, fresh start. and I'm in education, and how I try to approach every single thing is whether it's been a long day and I got to start a class or whatever, then it's that let me flip the switch. Like I have this person for an hour, I have this person for 6 hours on a hunt, and um, I need to give them the best experience possible. This is that their exposure. Even though I've been exposed to it my entire life,
Right.
this window is their exposure. How can I make that the best experience possible? And do it in a way that's not a hand holding kind of thing. Because
Hmm.
I'm introducing people to the outdoors, and they want to get introduced. Well, we're going to do a little hands and knees crawling. We're going to do a little bit of um, getting wet and
Right.
doing some different things. Be a little uncomfortable. It's going to be cold, and um, I would be. It's hard to be cold in Hawaii, I think.
Yeah,
uh,
there's not a cold experience, I can tell you
no,
that.
no. And so that brings me to my next thing of a lot of those experiences are canned. They're doing it day in, day out, and they've got it down. What things can I say in a conversation to help be a part of the process? What do captains or folks that even just like you guys like yourself that not necessarily doing charters all the time or ever, but you're you're taking people out, and how can I say I want to be a part of the process? How can I um be yeah I don't obviously I'm not going to be a part of the decision making because I don't have a clue, but
Hmm.
how can you be a little closer to someone you're just going fishing with versus somebody that's being a tour guide?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I think having enthusiasm for the trip, because what a lot of times people will come on and they just kind of plop themselves on the boat, and there's really two types of people, right? There's people that want to plop themselves on the boat and just go for the ride, and whatever they catch, whatever they it's like a laissez-faire, right? It's just kind of like this blah, right, of
Yeah,
a client, of a customer. And that's not fun because then you feel like you're trying to like drag the enthusiasm out for them, right? And at some point you're just like, did you want to come fishing at all? Did you want to come on the trip at all? Like I don't know what you mean. What are you doing? Versus the people that are amped up, right? Like when someone's like birds, birds, and they're yelling it out at the top, like because they're so excited to see that because they know like, all right, Captain said we had to look for birds. Let me participate and be a third eye, right? Let me be that second set of eyes out there that's participating in this experience, right? So I think being a participant is probably the best way to sum it up. But then there's also like the other end of the spectrum where you get these people that are like, well, I've done boating and stuff, so let me chime in and let me help grab lines and whatnot. It's like,
you don't know what
again,
you're doing.
you don't really know what you're doing because this guy or gal has been doing that, like docking at that slip every single day for the last however many days the season started, right? So it's like pulling into your driveway. Do you need someone to help you open the door and whatnot? No, just let me do my thing, right? So know when to participate and then know when not to participate because if so, all of a sudden people are kind of getting in your way, that's very agitating. Like, don't do that, right? Be
Sure.
enthusiastic, be respectful, ask questions. I'm probably guilty of this. I ask a lot, probably too many questions. My girlfriend makes comments like, "Why are you asking all these questions to these people?" Because I want to know. I want to participate because that gets these people pumped up because then it shows like, wow, Zach actually gives a shit, right? Like this client gives a shit. And maybe ask questions on stuff that you already know just to see what they would say and then start the conversation that way. So I think being enthusiastic, starting conversations, being respectful, and don't show up with not having the proper gear, right? Like we're not saying bring your own rod and reel because honestly, they're gonna have the stuff that they know that they use every day. It's way better than being the guy on the boat that has their own stuff, right? And all of a sudden it gets a big bird nest wrapped around the reel. And the captain can be like, well, it's your stuff. Like, I don't know, right? Versus that guy has his own stuff. He uses it every day. He knows what's tried and true. So it's really kind of like this balance of be enthusiastic, but don't be so overbearing that it almost becomes annoying, right?
Sure.
That's how I would kind of sum it up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that comes down to a personality thing. My family is pretty reserved, and so
Yep.
telling them to not, I mean, they're the type of people, they're going to enjoy the heck out of it, but they may be mistaken for somebody that is plopping on the boat. They're enjoying the heck out of it.
But that's
Um,
okay too. Like it,
right.
it all depends on the charter too. Like if you're because you're not gonna you don't sign up for a rock climbing trip expecting the guy to carry you up to the mountain, right?
Hmm.
But if you're going for like I used to do tours up in Providence on these big, center console Carolina skiffs, and they were extended, so they were 28 feet. And it was the people that were just enjoying it and asking a few questions, and like you could see they're very inquisitive, but focused on what their surroundings are. That, yeah, they just plop themselves on the boat, but they're enjoying it versus
Hmm.
the guy that's asking you 10 trillion questions about stuff that's like, yep, okay, come on, like get with the program here. We're doing the tour. Just listen to the tour. Like
Yep.
be participate, but don't over participate. You know what I mean?
Your introvert versus extrovert
Right,
personality.
right,
You can
right,
pick those
right.
out. And
Yeah,
we're a
totally.
bunch of introverts, but we definitely can feel that set or that line. That I think we're pretty good at that, of not being that annoying person on a tour or
Right,
a trip that is not getting the social cues. I think we're pretty
right,
good at understanding social cues.
right,
Hopefully
right.
having that. But we're also going to
Yeah,
a whole different culture. I mean, they're
yeah, good
part of the
point.
United States, but uh,
Mm,
what about that? I mean, if I'm sure you've been doing some fishing in different spots. When you go down to, let's just, I don't know if you've been to the Bahamas and done some fishing down that way, but
mm,
when you go to the Bahamas or you go to Mexico or Hawaii and some of those, even Alaska would be totally different for you from what you're doing.
yeah.
Um, what are you doing to or recommend for um, folks to approach that different culture?
Yeah, great question. So, funny little story. When I first moved to the Big Island, um, that I will say the fact that if you have any experience on the water whatsoever, like let's say you have a boat at home or you're, like you said, you're a hunter, right? So there's that immediate connection with that person, right? It's like, okay, as a captain, I'm thinking, all right, Clint's pretty legit. Like he gets it. He does some guiding, he's a hunter, he's an educator. Like I know I can treat Clint a lot differently than I can, Martha Stewart, who's probably never been, hunting or fishing, right? So there's that, right? But there is definitely a level of respect when you know that person has some sort of an idea of what they're doing. And the only way I can kind of sum it up is when I moved to Hawaii, it was really easy for me to make friends and acquaintances because there's like, oh, that dude has his captain's license. People watch me run a boat. They're like, okay, he knows what he's doing. Like he's not just some jackwagon behind the wheel, right? So there's immediate respect there. So it was a lot easier for me to integrate into the culture than it was, say, a friend of mine, Ryan, who I love. Ryan's an awesome friend of mine, but he was a white guy at the time, wasn't really into the outdoors, not really a great swimmer, and he'll laugh if he hears this, right? But it was a little bit more challenging for him to be a little bit more connected because he didn't have that level playing ground of that baseline, right?
Mm.
So I think from a tourist perspective, right? Because I think there's also that recognize that you are a tourist, right? You are a
Yep.
guest.
Yep.
Um, One thing that I noticed right out of the gate was, they say the whole howly, United States, but not really the US. That is a very, very, very real thing. I didn't recognize it until I was at the gym one day and someone said, "Oh, yeah, next week I'm going back to America." I'm like, "Excuse me?" Like, yeah, going back to, the America, the States. I go, "No, I realize that. I thought we were in America." They go, "Yeah, but Not really. I go, okay, all right. Well, last I checked, you guys were a star on the flag, but apparently not. So
Mm.
that is a very real feeling over there, right? So you just kind of have to be mindful of that when you're in a place like Hawaii. And the only place, I'm a white guy, right? But the only place that I've actually felt some sort of racism was actually in Hawaii, and it wasn't necessarily directed in a negative way. It was directed in a way of like, oh, okay, let me back up and think a little bit more about where I am in the world. And we're at the boat ramp, and this guy comes up, and he was kind of being an ass. Let's just put it that way. But he comes up to me, and I just said, "Hey, man, how was your charter?" Right? And he was a Hawaiian guy. And he goes, my charter was great. I had to tell the stories of my people and my marine life. And it was like, oh, okay. All right. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Like, hold up here. So I go back, and a crew member who'd been living on the island a lot longer than I had. He goes, what's up? I go, I don't know. That guy was like kind of being a dick. And he goes, well, you just experienced some racism. I'm like, huh, never thought about it like that. Like that was an interesting interaction to have with someone. So again, like knowing kind of where you sit in the pecking order, so to speak, if you want to put it that way. The culture in Hawaii is very strong, it's very friendly, but there's also a very big level of respect that you have to have for your environment, the people, family, especially the ocean. So I think that's a big component over there. But if you want to kind of boil it back to like how you operate here in the Northeast versus Florida versus California, I think it's just being open-minded, and doing a little bit of research before you get down there and just being kind of asking questions,
Yeah.
like don't be the person that just sits on the boat and just does nothing, right? Participate, I think is
Yeah.
the biggest takeaway.
How would you gain the respect of a captain you didn't know, without sounding like a know-it-all? I mean, you've got a
Yeah.
boat, you've
Yep.
got some experience, and the first thing you do is walk or call that guy up and say, "Yeah, I got a boat up. I got a 60-foot boat, I don't know, whatever. You've got some experience, and I got a podcast, and I do this, and this is what I do for a career. How do you
Yeah.
how do you and I'm not an arrogant individual. You can come off for sure as pretty arrogant by being straightforward with that, but um how would someone like myself, who I'm an outdoorsman, I'm a sportsman, but I don't have the experience on the ocean at all. I mean,
Mhm.
this is probably my fourth time out in the ocean. How do I gain that respect that I'm here to have a great time with you as well? Not just it's about hanging out with you and not just the fish. How do I gain that
Yeah.
that sort of respect?
Yeah, so I think from your perspective, like what you've been doing is the right way to go about it, right? You reached out to a friend, right? You reached out to me, you're like, hey Zach, what's the deal here, right? And then hopefully that friend would then connect you with someone that you've already kind of built this level of trust just by mentioning, hey, I know Zach. I'm a Western hunter. I don't really know a whole lot about fishing, but I'm not just a guy who wants to come out there and get the good old fashioned tour. Like I'm a hunter. I like getting my hands dirty. What would you suggest I do? I think that question right there, what would you suggest I do, opens it up into a way that it's kind of like, huh, okay, this guy knows enough to ask, but doesn't want to get too far into it to be like, hey, I know exactly what to do, right? Because
Yeah.
now you're just asking a question that whether or not he provides you the right answer, that you may or may already know, may or may not already know, at least you're getting his opinion. So I think I would probably put it in a way where you're searching for opinions rather than answers. So hey man, what kind of tackle do you suggest you use like this time of year if you're looking for a guide and the keys for tarpon? And if he says, yeah, I like the fish like tackle, I'm like, oh, cool, all right, well, yeah, I'm thinking about coming down to the Keys, like, would you be interested in booking a charter, right? So kind of almost be a little bit more investigative in how you're questioning versus hi, I'm Zach, and I have a boat, and I have a 100-ton captain's license, and I've lived in Hawaii, California, and Florida, and I know how to drive boats, and I drive 60-foot boats all day long. I want to get a charter. It's like, okay, you sound like an asshole first, right?
Yep.
Um, but you know, let me kind of take it back a little bit. Like, hey man, I run boats up in Rhode Island. I'm coming down. I did this the other day. I'm coming down to South Carolina. I want to rent a boat. Um, Wondering what you would suggest, right? That's a much more like less invasive
Yeah.
form of question and like conversation starter versus like, hey, I know everything. Take me fishing, you
Yeah.
know? And so the
Yeah.
captain's gonna be like, I don't want to take that guy fishing at all. You know,
Or if we
like,
are, it's going to be so quick. And
yeah, like
get their fish in and out and work for a tip and be done.
exactly, exactly. So yeah,
Um,
again, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and that just makes me think of another thing. What I absolutely can't stand on some of those boats is the folks that are working for a tip. Like they lay it out there that I am working for a tip.
Yeah.
And instead of, and I suppose it's just not, they don't know me, they're not going to trust me. But
Mhm.
um I've tipped the captains that I've been on very well, because I asked the captain and said, what would make this first mate's day? Like, what is that? Like, okay, good. And I said, is 30%, 10, 20, 30%? What's that percentage that just would make his day? And I've used that before as a thing, but I didn't want to be encouraged to do that. Let me make that
Mm.
decision. Like I
Sure.
want I've been on those big head boats, like you said, been on one of those where it was just, hey, bait your hook, don't forget to tip. Bait your hook, don't forget to tip. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, we're just fishing right now.
Right.
Let's not worry about that right now.
Hmm.
And maybe that's just that boat, and they're really struggling with knowing how to, they're not entertaining there, they're not connecting with their passengers, they don't know how to work. It's like a server. They don't
Right.
know how to wait tables, serve tables, like someone that's good at it. But
Right.
um yeah, I guess there's no question there. It's just I hate being pressured to tip. I will tip.
Hmm.
I will
Yeah.
absolutely tip.
Oh, I get it. I hate being pressured into any sort of thing. Like, don't I'm either gonna do it or I'm not, right? Like no hard like don't pressure me hard sales thing. It's not like I've worked and live and still work in the sales world, so to speak, because you're always having to sell yourself. But pressuring someone to be like, buy, or tip, 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 really uncomfortable for me at least. And it sounds like it is for you as well.
Yeah.
Um, I guess it kind of, there's few frames of thought there, right? Like it's super dependent on the boat, right? A head boat, their demographic or their audience is people that typically don't go fishing. So for them, they have to set a precedence for that to
Right.
be known, right? Like it can't just be the sign on the side like gratuities appreciated, 20%, blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of people, and then not for nothing, but you also have a lot of different ethnicities and different cultures that tipping might not be a part of that. Like if you go in Europe, go to the
Right.
restaurant, tipping's not a thing. And that's why when a lot of Europeans come over here and they're at a restaurant, maybe servicing isn't that great because they know they're not going to get a tip. So that's also kind of a mindset that you
Mm.
kind of have to understand. It's
Yeah.
like not everyone, you might be because like, all right, obviously I'm going to tip these guys well, right? Because they work pretty hard and that's just part of the culture of what you do in the guiding world. And it's also different, right? If you're going to tip differently on a head boat than you would if you're on a guy's boat for literally 4 hours and it's just you and him all day, right? Because again, you kind of want to build that relationship with that guide so that you're coming back to him for year after year after year after year, right? And that experience becomes better and better because you're forming that bond and that relationship. Like before I got my license, we would go out with this company called Big Game, which I, suggested to you, and I know those guys, the Bacon Brothers and Seamus, pretty well now. But we would always make sure that we tipped them well, and we had a relationship with those guys, and they kind of almost became friends, right? Friendly, right? So yeah, tipping is kind of a weird thing, but it's standard in the industry.
Right.
And it really comes down to, I think, the culture of the boat and the company that you're working with. Also the situation, right? Head boat versus, personalized charter, and the guy themselves, right? Are they gonna work the extra mile? Are they gonna make sure you're good to go? Or are they just gonna be like treat you like someone else that's just plopped on the boat, So it's definitely something that you should do. And if you really like the guide and you want to come back to them year after year, tip them really well, because they will definitely remember you.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And
Yep.
you see the recommendation, like the one I was looking at the other day, I thought it just said 10-15%. But
Mhm.
looking at that, I see, okay, that's a $1,500-$1,600 charter. That's $160. That doesn't seem like very much.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
At
20% is pretty standard.
20% is pretty standard. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of
Typically.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. Of the gross cost of the trip.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. I figure I'd cover that because some people, that's a common question among guided hunts and guided fishing trips across the board is what's the standard? What do people prefer?
Yeah. And then also, and I'm sorry to cut you
Yeah.
off real quick, but like giving the guide some of the catch too is part of,
Oh,
in some,
okay.
in, on some boats is part of that. Now, some boats, they don't let you keep any of the catch. Some boats let you keep some of it. Like it's all boat to boat, person to person. But, I know that when we went tuna fishing, we would always give the guys part of the catch, because it's just kind of like, hey, if they're also a boat that commercially tuna fishes, and you're just kind of along for the ride and they're going to go sell the catch after, again, it's all really kind of dependent. And that's,
Yeah.
again, interviewing, giving questions, asking about, what the program is all things that you're going to get and be able to understand a little bit more about what kind of trip and where it is and how it's going to operate will end up being.
Yeah. Let's end with maybe a experience or two you had that think back to a charter or whatever, maybe just some guys on a boat, but tell me about a time when there was some folks that you didn't really know on the boat and it was just the best trip. Like not
Mm.
just you and your
Mm.
buddies. I don't want to experience
Yeah,
you and your
yeah.
buddies, but whether that was a charter, someone that you didn't know, whether you didn't know the captain or you didn't know the other folks who were in the six pack. But what was one of those experiences that was just lights out, and what made it that?
Hmm. Well, I think I do a lot of private clients. And for me, I'm a lifelong learner. Like, I'm always the student white belt mentality. Like, that's just kind of who I am as a person. And I think if you ask anyone, they're like, Zach's always interviewing people. It's just, I'm sure you do the same thing, Clint. Like, you have a podcast, you kind of get into that mode where you're like, what makes that person tick? Like, what makes what makes them successful, right?
Yeah.
So I think recently, I'll do a recent one because this year, um, I got to experience, I did a lot of deliveries, a lot of charters, and probably the most to date within my own business, not working for someone else. And, one of the DuPont family members had me move his boat, and he went along for the ride up to Boston. And it was a trip that started out a little bit rocky, both in weather and just in the kind of the vibe that I was getting from him. And I think a lot of that probably had to do with his last name, just because I think people tend to treat wealthier individuals a little bit differently when they know that they probably have more money than anyone else that
Mm-hmm.
right? But once we kind of broke through the ice and really got talking, he was probably one of the kindest and nicest people I've ever met, and just an awesome individual. And I find that a lot of my clients are that way. And because I deal with a lot of high net worth individuals, what's interesting is, and I can really just sum it up in one experience is, you know, one of the DuPont, Mr. DuPont, he offered me a sandwich. And I was like, oh, well, that was nice. I appreciate that. He goes, yeah, my wife made my favorite sandwich, peanut butter and jelly. I go, huh,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I like PB&Js too.
He's got
Like
more money than most people in the
more,
US.
yeah, like that the DuPont family name is worth billions of dollars,
Yeah.
if not more. I mean, literally started portions of the country, like we're talking American royalty at this point. I mean, right up there with Carnegie and Rockefeller and Vanderbilt, right? All those names, DuPont, right? Created gunpowder and TNT. So for a family that literally shaped how the United States operates today, and be able to talk with someone who's within 1 to 2 degrees of separation of that, and who went off and started his own company that was incredibly successful, um, was really interesting to be around and just a wealth of information and knowledge and wanted to share. So I think that was probably one of the most impactful experiences that I've had recently. I know that probably didn't go into like, oh, the guy had like a, missing leg and we got him in the water or something crazy like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But um, I think for me, learning about how people got to where they were on the boat that they're on, because again, you're moving high net worth individuals with high net worth assets, and you're like, huh, I wonder what got them ticking, and
Yeah.
most of the time, I've only had one person that wasn't very open or forthcoming. Not that they should be, but um, having conversation with those types of people opens your eyes and you're like, wow, they're just really good, wholehearted people at the end of
Yeah.
the day. They just love being on the water just as much as you do.
Yeah. Whether you get a high end, I'll call them a high end or
Yeah, yeah.
well known person on a podcast that gets your heart kind of thumping, like, oh, I'm talking to this person right now.
Sure, sure.
Or I got to take our governor out on a fly fishing
Oh,
trip
very cool.
the other day. So me and Miss Christy Nome went and
Very cool.
I was teaching her to fly fish, and it was basically 1-on-1 or 2-on-1. I had another guy there that was much better fly fisherman than I am. That was my position to take her out and show her great experience, help her catch some fish. And I was thinking, what do you ask people like that? What do you ask?
Yeah.
And so it was it was difficult for me, but yet just wanted to ask these great questions that is, yeah, I know a lot more about you than you know me. And
Right.
I don't want to be weird, but I just want to get to know who you are. And
Yeah.
my boss put it to me the other day very well when talking about having a conversation with, I don't remember the full context, but she's like, you interview people all the time. That shouldn't be that hard. And it's like, you know what? I should probably approach more conversations with people just like my interviews. Why would
Yeah.
I not? And I think people would be much more receptive to chatting with me or getting to know me or just in a conversation if I'm asking them about them.
Right.
And because I'm a little bit of I'm definitely an introvert and struggle to have open conversations with people I don't know because I don't want to start the conversation. That's what an introvert does.
Right.
And
Right.
but she had mentioned that. I was like, oh, I can do that. I can ask inquisitive questions. I can ask
Yeah.
simple questions that help me get to know you and them. So that was a good piece of advice I got the other day. And basically what you're saying here too. I wrote
Yeah.
that down with the charter captain and asking some of these questions. How do you operate? What are you using for tackle? What's a day look like when we're trying to target one thing and we're going to switch to another? And some of these questions I can just ask. And I tried to do that with a salty captain once.
Probably didn't
he
work too well.
it was just like 2-word answers, and like, buddy, I'm trying here. I'm trying to
Right.
have a
But
conversation.
to put to that point, right? That guy, now you're like, I don't want to go with that guy,
No.
right?
Yeah.
Because he's like, I don't want to be on a boat with someone that has 2-word answers for every freaking question I get.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be a quiet charter where all we're doing is catching fish and that's it. like,
Yeah.
or if we catch any fish, versus the guy that's enthusiastic and like, yeah, we do this, we do that. If it's this day, if it's this weather, if it's this swell, like he's got a plan for everything. And he'll tell you when he's like, yeah, I don't know, we'll figure it out. Like that's the guy you want to be with. That's the guy that gets the blood pumping.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. So, what did your conversation with the governor? What was that? What was that like?
Oh,
Was it like friends and family? Like, hi your kids, or was it more like, so what's your take on this? Like, what do you think?
she uh, asked me about my kids and asked me about certain programs that I'm running in work, and said just I could tell she was kind of curious about some of the demographics coming into our state, and asked I asked her a lot about just some of her background, and because she's a rancher and a pheasant hunter, used to run an outfit, and I asked her what if she missed any of that, and we just kind of went back and forth with some of that, a lot of the fishing technique, not just like talking about life, but talking about the fishing technique as well, and we just discussed some of the philosophies with what I'm doing at work, and yeah, and she was very crazy thing is I was coming back from Colorado on an elk hunt, and she was going to Colorado on an elk hunt, and I'm in the Wheatland, Wyoming, in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, and I go into the use the bathroom, and I come out, and she's there, standing there, gonna go
No
into
shit.
the bathroom. This is like 2 months before the fishing trip,
That's
and
too funny.
I said, Miss No, Governor No, hi, I work for you.
That's pretty
And
funny.
told her, said, I'll be taking you on a fishing trip here pretty soon. She's like, oh, you're gonna be doing that. So we had a really good start to conversation. So we talked elk hunting like
Sure.
crazy. That was the
That's awesome.
main thing, and that helped a lot, having something to where do I start with. It's like not
Yeah.
just, okay, Mr. Owner of Home Depot, we're going CEO of
Right.
Home Depot, we're going to talk about lumber.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right. 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 Right.
we had a thing there to talk about that was elk hunting. So we talked a lot of
Sure.
elk hunting, and that she loves archery elk hunting and why, and that sort of thing. So that was good. That was
That's
our
that's
main
pretty
thing.
cool.
So very
Yeah.
similar what you said is finding that thing you can connect with them on, doing that homework. I was trying to do my homework ahead of time. It's like, I know my one piece, elk hunting. That's what
Mhm.
that's what we're gonna connect on. So that was
Yeah.
good.
And to her effect, like, you know, I heard this quote, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it basically came down to some of the best interviewers or smartest people are the ones that ask you all the questions, right? And they get as much information in, and even though you think that you're talking to them, they're really getting as much information out of you as you of them, right? And it's a two-way street, right?
Mm.
And one person that does that really, really well is Warren Buffett, right? And that's why he is who he is, right? And there was this one person who went, and this is just like a side story, but went to have dinner with Warren Buffett, and they're thinking, what questions am I going to ask Warren Buffett, right? One of the best prolific investors in the whole world. And he left dinner. He's like, I didn't get one question, and the guy asked me all the questions, like about him. And he's like, what do I have to offer, right? But meanwhile, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, asking those questions are going to be the ones that really get you the answers that you want to hear, right? Whether you're like, okay, check the box, I already know that, or ooh, that's a good idea, or yeah, all right, I could deal without it.
Yeah.
Like good, bad, or indifferent, those questions are going to get you wherever you want to go. And it sounds like the governor kind of knew that, right? Because she's over here interviewing you just as much as you're like, oh shit, what do I ask the governor? Like
Yeah.
she already knows, like she's handled it,
Yeah.
that's why she's the governor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then went out of her way. She had her aides help do this, but went out of her way, and her photographer had a great picture of me and the other guy with her and a fish. So
that's
she
cool.
she sent it, signed it, wrote a little thank you. And she didn't need to do that. Like that was a very genuine nice thing to do. And it's like, well, sweet. Now I got this cool 8.5 by 11 print of
Yeah,
with fall colors, beautiful yellow aspen birch leaves in the
Dude,
back, just gorgeous.
she
Absolutely
planned
gorgeous.
that. She
Oh,
knew exactly what she was doing the whole time. I
yeah.
love that. Like that just like lights me up because it's the people that go like the extra mile that you wouldn't even think about. Like, I'm gonna have my photographer come and shoot this guy, and this guy is gonna be like, when it comes time for voting season, be like, oh, I got him. I got some
Yeah.
space in his head now,
Yep.
like, but she did it with such authenticity and genuinely, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and I know nothing about her from a policy standpoint, but
Yeah.
sounds like if she likes the outdoors, that she's pretty cool then.
Oh, she shot a giant bull in New Mexico this year, and then she
Hmm.
shot a bull in Colorado with her bow. That was
So
just
she's a badass.
yeah, she shot that thing. I asked her, as like, because I saw the video and I said, that was like, how far was that? She's like, it was about 40 yards or so. It's like, that's a great shot. And I asked,
That is a good shot.
how did you find time to where did you practice? It's like, well, Matthews hooked me up with this bow like a week before. I was out on the lawn at 4 a.m. every morning, just like
That's awesome.
shooting my bow. I was like, dang, lady.
She's a stud.
Yeah, and I had heard her on Field Ethos, their podcast.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Oh,
had
Field. I love that show.
she was on there, so I had something to talk to her about on that, saying, hey, I heard you on this, and that helped. Like, I didn't really know her background.
Hmm.
Really fascinating story about just having a death tax in her family, just almost
Hmm.
take the family farm, and how that kind of drove her from being a farmer rancher to, I got to do something about this. So I'm going to Washington.
Yeah.
I'm getting voted in to go do that, and then taking care of that, and then coming now just running our state like a champ. So,
Yeah.
um,
That's awesome.
but
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
that's pretty cool.
I think any politician that has an appreciation for the outdoors is um, automatically there's this feeling of they believe in what the United States was built on, and just tradition and protecting something, right? Because if they love the outdoors truly, then they are more inclined to protect it at whatever cost, and we have this great episode dropping because we don't drop shows at the same rate we do that we used to, but it's with this guy by the name of Jeffrey Walker, and he is one of the last duck call and decoy makers in Newburyport, Massachusetts. And his son Josh Walker, who I'm friends with, he owns a company called 1620 Workwear. So I don't know if you've ever heard of that company, but it's a workwear brand. And we got hooked up, went to the decoy shop, did it in the shop. The dude is like a just grizzled, like in the best way possible, like white beard, awesome, like just very picture, like Massachusetts outdoorsman, right? It's him. He could be on like a Filson's advertisement. And he talks about, how being an outdoorsman and being a hunter and a fisherman is so important to him. But really, in order to invoke change, he got into politics, because that's how you can move the needle, right? Is getting policies put in place and putting things in place to then help, push the ideology of conservation forward. So really interesting episode that we're excited to kind
Yeah,
of put together, and a lot of different, things that we talked about today would probably be, in there as well.
well, very cool. Hey, last question for you.
Hit
As
me.
we kind of sign off, I'm embarrassed to say, but I really struggle with seasickness. And this, this last, I mean, I've tried to do stuff, and this time I'm gonna go to my doctor and say, "What do you got? Give me the
Yeah.
triple dose of everything."
Uh-huh.
Um, what do you got for me to? And I'm wondering if it's something that you just never can get over. It's like, is it, I don't, I have no way to condition myself for such a thing.
Yeah, true.
I can't work out to get better at it. It's just
Right.
the reality. So I I can't. Am I weak because
No, not
I
at
got a weak
all.
stomach? But
Nah.
I can't do anything about it. But boy, am I still there, um, fishing away, and I say, hold on a second. All right, we're back at it.
That's
And
funny.
so I deal with it, but I got to get something better. What have you done with folks that just can't keep their cookies?
Yeah. So let me ask you, like, what have you done in the past?
Dramamine and doing it before, or like the night before, and then taking it day of.
Yep.
Uh, that was not enough. So
Really?
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Huh.
So
Yeah, I mean that's usually my go-to recommendation because a lot of people will take it like right before the trip, but um by the time it even hits your body, like you're already too far into being seasick. And then at
yeah,
that point it's a waste, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I would probably definitely do the non-drowsy for those listening, because the non-drowsy, and you still will get somewhat drowsy, but the regular Dramamine will put you on your ass if it's, yeah, if
really,
you're affected by that. Oh
yeah,
yeah, like because before I really started working on the water heavily, we would go fishing and I would get seasick. Not anymore, but a lot of it also has to do with your ears, right? Your inner ear is what's controlling your balance. So there might be something there that you have to go get checked out. So I'd probably go to your ear, nose, and throat doctor, your ENT, and see what he has to say, because your regular doctor is not going to have any, unless he was a prior ear, nose, and throat doctor, right? But that your inner ears and your nasal passages are going to be the number one things to whether you're acclimating to pressure. So like you're going
yeah.
spearfishing in Hawaii. So definitely get, some sort of that checked out. And then they're going to have the best recommendations from a doctor's perspective regarding seasickness, because it's
That's
all
good to
comes down
know.
to your inner, all in your inner ear. And I come from a family with my dad has really bad ears. I have bad ears. But what's funny is my dad and I don't suffer from seasickness, and my mom, my brother do. So it's also, I think, genetic.
Yeah.
But my recommendation is usually Dramamine night before, and then take one early, because you're usually starting early in the morning, early in the morning, right? Don't don't load up on a big breakfast, right? I think a lot of it has to do with, digestion as well. And if you can go without a little bit, not only will it help if you have to go over the side, but I really do believe it kind of helps from the body's perspective to just have a settled stomach, right? Because if you're not used to all that motion, everything in your stomach's churning, it kind of goes up into your throat, and then you kind of have this nausea feeling. So if you can kind of prevent that nauseating feeling, I think that helps a lot. Um, and then ginger, you ever eat ginger chews? No? All right. So ginger chews, I'll send you a link on Amazon, but it comes in a green bag. It has like this ginger cartoon character on it. And like back when I was getting seasick, or even now, like if I'm going on a plane and I start to kind of feel nauseous because the air is dry and gross, pop some of those, settles your stomach right down.
Oh,
So anything that's going to
cool.
settle your stomach down is usually going to be a plus. Um, and then pack a lunch that is simple, like turkey and cheese sandwich, like,
Yep.
and don't drink
Oh yeah.
alcohol and boating.
I can't do
Yeah,
it.
no, drinking, because there's guys that'll drink beer and liquor. I'm like, I can't do
I
that.
don't know
And
how they do that.
I don't either. And it's not from a safety standpoint. I think it's like 8 times. Basically, if you have one beer, it's as if you had like two or three, right? Um, Also, something that I've noticed is depending on what kind of boat you're going to be on, will also determine how you feel throughout the day, right? So, inboard diesels, they're going to produce a lot of smoke, well, not a lot, but exhaust. And a lot of times those fumes are kind of noxious and they kind of make you feel kind of crappy. Now, I've been accustomed to it as I've been running boats for a long time. But for people that aren't, you might want to go with a boat that has outboards because it's quieter, less vibration, less smell. Um, carbon monoxide a lot of times will accumulate in the stern of a boat. So if it's a boat that is only been able, if you're only able to sit and fish the stern of, right? That might be, if you're really, really sensitive to being seasick, that might be a boat that you might want to pass on. And you might want to go with a boat that's like a center console, where if you're starting to feel seasick, and this year I had one of my good friends on the boat, and then he had some of his friends from out of town who had never been on a boat before. So we attempted to go fishing, and immediately one of them, I could look over, I'm like, "How you feeling there, Brent?" And he goes, I'm like, "All right, lines up, everybody. Not worth it." Like, because we weren't really going fishing. We were more so just going for a boat ride. And if we caught a fish, it would have been fun. So I'm like, "Dude, sit in the bow, all the air you can get, right? And just hang out." And then we just started moving the boat, you know? So if you do get seasick, go to the bow, get air, you know? If it's rough out, you're going to want to be in the stern, because that's where the most comfortable part of the boat is. If you're in the bow, you're just going to be pounding away if it's rough. But air and, you know, you want to stay hydrated throughout the day. So those are I know I threw a lot at
Nope,
you.
that's the best answer I've ever got on that question.
Well,
I didn't know anything about ginger chews. I didn't think about the motor and being
yeah.
I mean, that's things that seems like common sense, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't have thought.
well, I mean, it's from years of having been seasick and knowing what helps me, and then also, you know, knowing, like, my mom gets seasick all the time, right? But we just got to keep the boat moving. You know, we can't go bottom fishing with Carol. We can't. Run and gun and stripers on a nice calm day, perfect. But bottom fishing with mom, it's not gonna work. So yeah, I would say those are probably the best bets. And then also tell your captain, be like, "Dude, I'm gonna be fine, but just know that I tend to get seasick." And then they might have suggestions for you. But yeah, staying hydrated, making sure you don't have a ton of food in your stomach the night before, but you ate a lot the day before. I'm sorry, the day of, but the night before, eat, right?
Yep.
Clean, not like fried junk. I don't know. I eat bananas. I know bananas are like superstitious, right? But that potassium is going to give you enough, you know, in your blood sugar to kind of level you out. So that's what I got for you.
Well, that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. I don't know if you can hear it, but it sounds like there's like a tornado going on up there. I don't know what's going on, but
I can't hear anything.
Oh,
no.
good, because they're at not in my house. I'm in my parents' house right now. This is not my office. And just like you got done with Christmas recently. I still have a house full of family, and but glad we got to chat about this a little bit and get an idea of where to start. And hopefully that helps some guys think about off season fishing, or, you know, booking some stuff in the fall. I mean, we're mostly, a lot of our guys are doing some hunting in the fall, but making room for some of those fall charters and things it sounds like that's the time to be fishing. But
fall fish in New England's the best.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
And if people want to check out the podcast, want to check out anything you got to offer, where do they do that at?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is just at along the keel, ALONG, and then the keel, EE. And then you can shoot me an email, zach@alongthekeel.com. I'm more than happy to send you in the right direction on whether it's boating education, connecting with guides, fishermen, you know, fishing questions, what have you. And then I think my number's on there too. So give me a ring, shoot me a text. I'm open.
Well, appreciate it, Zach,
Yeah.
and thanks for jumping on and even communicating with me on Christmas Eve. I didn't want to bug you on Christmas Day, so thanks so much
Nah,
for
not at all.
setting that up, and great chatting with you. And we'll get this published here soon.
Right on. Love it. Thanks, Clint.
You bet.
To the land, but it ain't my ground. This is God's country.